So showing property from a practical standpoint, there's a couple of mechanical things that you need to understand. And before I even get into those, I'd love to get a sense of where you guys are. This is new agent launch. The likelihood is that you're newer. How many, just put in chat, if you would, how many people have taken buyers out already to see homes? You can either put yes or no, just so I get a sense of where we are with the 8 people that are here in the room right now. Because if everybody has already done a lot of this, I don't want to waste too much time with telling you things that you already know. I've got a couple yeses. I've got 1 no so far. Anybody else? Miriam is coming in. I'm going to let her in. It's kind of 50-50 right now in terms of some have, some haven't. So I'm going to kind of do a quick cut on this. The mechanics. You can't show homes if you don't belong to the multiple listing service. Rule number 1. And so the way that the MLSs are divided up in the state, there's actually a lot of them. In my estimation, there's actually too many of them. But each different MLS sort of controls the listing inventory in their geographic area. So we belong to the New Jersey MLS, which is not the entire state. The NJ MLS is kind of the northern corner of the state. It includes Bergen County, Passaic County, a few towns in Hudson County. And those are really the primary areas that it covers. Now, could somebody who is belonging to a different MLS come up into Bergen County and take a listing up here? Of course they could. They would then have to get membership in the New Jersey MLS to put it there so that you could see it, right? There's no point in taking a listing if you belong to Trend, which is the greater Philadelphia sort of Trenton area MLS, and only marketing it to the agents down there. So you'd have it up here. But the New Jersey MLS is just a handful of areas. The Garden State MLS, which is a little further south, covers Morris County and Essex County and Union County and Somerset County and Hunterdon County and Warren County. It is a big MLS. And if you want to show properties, if you get folks who say to you, I want to take a look at properties that are in Essex County, if you do not belong to that MLS, you're just not going to be able to find them. There will be some who will put it both in the Garden State and the NJMLS because they know the likelihood is high that agents up here are going to be asked to go into Essex County. But you're going to need to have the membership in the MLS, right? Hudson County is its own MLS, right? So make sure that you have the right access for the properties that you want to show. If you have somebody who wants to see properties in another part of the state that you do not have access to, one of the things that's commonplace is just go find an agent from that MLS. Typically find a Keller Williams agent in an office that's in that area and partner with them, right? You'll do a lot of the showing. You'll do a lot of the writing up the contract. They will be able to get you in and you'll have to kind of share the commissions. But MLS access is the first key. I've had people reach out to me recently that said, I've got buyers that want to see properties this week and I don't have MLS access yet. Well, you can't do it then. You just can't. Right. And the way that it works with the super keys, now we have these keys that are sort of added into our smartphone. It used to be that we had a separate device. But what happens is each MLS has different codes for the lockboxes that they use. So you're going to have a New Jersey MLS lockbox and a Garden State MLS lockbox. And each one has a different set of codes. If you belong to both MLSs, when your smartphone updates, it will load the right codes in so that you can access those boxes. But the trick is you got to have the right codes for the right box. If you have a super key and you belong to the New Jersey MLS and you go to a house that has a Garden State lockbox, even with your super key, you can't get in because you don't have the right codes, right? So kind of beating the dead horse on this, make sure you've got the right MLS access and that you've got the super key installed. Now, most of the time when we want to show homes, I believe most MLSs now use a software program called Showtime or Showing Time, something like that, which when you go on the MLS, it kind of gives you the information in terms of what do you need to do, right? What's the process here? When I was first showing homes in the early 2000s, what we
Al,
yeah.
One thing on the, just so I don't know if you mentioned, I don't think you did, but if you have the NJMLS and you have Garden State MLS, you can sign up for one and they work together. So you don't need to sign up separately.
Right. You don't have to sign up for separate supers. You have the one super key and that key will hold up to 30 or 40 different MLS codes in it. Once you join up with that MLS, those codes will automatically be loaded into your key. You don't need a different key, right? Good point. It used to be, when I started showing homes, that the instructions always were that we were to call the homeowner directly and make arrangements to show the property at a time that was convenient for them. And that process went away. Listing agents didn't want any more buyer's agents calling their homeowners directly for any reason. So we now use this software that sort of gives the instructions. And if there's any restrictions, if there's anything that you can't go after a certain time, not uncommon to have families with small children and infants that are in bed at around 7 o'clock at night, and they don't want any more showings after that. And that kind of instruction will be in the MLS in the showing instructions. Whatever those showing instructions are, you've got to follow those, right? You can't bypass those. You can't just be driving down the street and have a buyer say, "Oh, I like that house. Can we see it?" And you happen to have a lockbox key and some time. You have to go in and do it the right way, right? The opening of that box actually is what registers that you were there. So another point, it's not uncommon if you find a property that there's a lot of interest in, that there may be appointments kind of scheduled one right after the other. And what I sometimes see happening is the first agent goes in, uses their lockbox key, opens up that box, gets the key out. And as they're finishing up their tour of the house, the next agent is with their couple right on the sidewalk. They just take that key and they hand it to them. That isn't what you want to do, because if you don't put that back in and close that box again, and that next agent opens it up again, that agent won't have their visit registered. And that's important, because if something goes missing and there was 5 different agents who were in the house and you're the only registered one who opened the box, you're going to have to explain what happened, right? So make sure, it's not a big deal. Just make sure you put the key back in the box, close the box up, and let the next agent open it up again. Okay. That's what I really want you to kind of know about the mechanics.
Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Because it happened to me.
It happens to everybody. It's going to happen in a busy market, right? So do we need a super key is the question. Yeah, you only need a super key if you want to get inside the houses. If you're comfortable showing just the outside, then you don't, right? So you got to get one. And it's not expensive. I think you lease it for like $9 or $10 a month. It's not a big deal, but it's going to be a recurring charge that's going to hit your credit card. I see another question in chat. So you recommend that we join Garden State MLS 2. How about New York State? You know, what I would say is you only have to join your primary. And for you, New Jersey MLS is your primary. Join the others as you need to. I don't know that you need to pay. Now, it's not expensive to join an MLS. It's about, depending on which one. Garden State, I think, is like $62 and change for a 6-month block. So it's not like it's a deal killer. But if you don't need to spend that money because you don't have any need to go there, then I would hold off. And then when you do have a buyer who wants to go there, you just join. It takes you fill out the forms and you have the broker sign off. Your broker signs off and they just scan it and send it to the MLS. And Garden State will turn you on in 2 hours, right? So you can get it quickly. Do it as you need to. And New York's a whole different animal. They don't run MLSs quite the same way. If you have to go in, if you're going to show properties in New York, I would encourage you to talk to your team leader about best practice around that, because I never did have New York license, so I don't know the best practice around their MLSs. I'm going to kind of skip through some of this. MLS membership, I'm just talking about when you join the MLS, you can join as a lot of different licensing statuses. You're going to be a licensed salesperson. And here's the thing. You can't belong to the multiple listing service until you belong to the board. Only realtors, professional realtors, can join MLSs in New Jersey, which there's been a lot of concern a little bit about that, because in theory, you don't have to be a member of the board of realtors. You could choose to be a real estate salesperson and not choose to join the professional organization of the board. But the MLSs have conditioned access to belonging to the board, which, there is some restricted trade kinds of stuff there that gets challenged every once in a while. But the point is, you got to join the board first, then you can join the MLS, then you can get your super keys, right? Okay. practical stuff. Safety first. This is not a dangerous profession. However, luck favors people who don't put themselves in dumb positions, right? And so, for example, I never want to hear anybody going out there on the fly and meeting a customer at the house to show property to someone who you've never met before. That is dangerous and it's dumb. You haven't pre-qualified them. You haven't really done a good buyer's consultation to see if they meet the criteria to be ready, willing, and able to even earn the right to your time. But second of all, you don't know who they are. And so to go into a home with someone that you don't know, that you haven't had a chance to kind of vet a little bit is silly. It's dumb. Don't do it. If you are asked to do something quickly before you've had a chance to really check things out for yourself, what I'd encourage you to do is meet them in a public area first, right? And I know that's gotten harder to do in COVID times. It's harder to get to a Starbucks or whatever it is, but there's places that you could go and meet them in public. And what I would say is simply let them know that there's some documentation that's required by law that they sign off on before you see the home. And that would be the what? What document do you need to get their signature on before you actually go out and start touring homes? It's the CIS, the Consumer Information Statement. Without a signed copy of that in your possession, you are violating the law if you're showing that house, right? So I would just sort of say, look, we just need to go through a couple things. Let's meet at the Starbucks around the corner and go through those things, or meet if you have to in front of the house before, but then trust your judgment, trust your instincts, trust your spider senses. If something doesn't feel right, you need to bail out. And it's easy enough to do. You just take your phone, you look at it, and you're like, oh, wait, hold on for a second, I got to take this call. And then you put it to your ear, and then suddenly your child is sick, even if you don't have a child. There's just ways that you can put yourself out of harm's way if you don't feel safe. It's not a dangerous profession. I don't want you to kind of be, anxious all the time, but I don't want you to do silly things. So don't meet people in empty houses that you haven't met. Always let somebody know where you're going and when you should be done. Hey, you know what? I'm going to go out. I'm going to show some properties. I should be done around 3:00 because if you don't come back, I want somebody to be looking for you, right? Let people know. And again, I'm purposefully kind of putting all these things out there. I don't want you to be concerned, but I want you to be aware, okay? Don't let your buyers drive the car. Now, a lot of times, buyers drive their cars, you drive your car. I preferred personally to have the buyers in my car because then I could hear the conversation and we could talk from home to home. Although that process has also been called into question lately to say, you know what, maybe it's better that we don't go together. I don't want anybody to ever accuse me of saying something or doing something in the car when nobody else was around to kind of witness it, right? Something to think about. But certainly don't let the buyers drive the car. When you go into the home and you're showing the home, again, best practice is you've seen it first. You've been in it first because you've previewed it. That's best practice. If you haven't seen that house first and you're discovering it for the very first time, along with your buyers, I'm going to be honest with you. I really believe that the primary value that you have for your buyer that day is you have a key and they don't. And if that's the selling point, that's not a very strong value proposition. What we really want to do is to know the properties well enough to help the buyers filter which ones are the ones worth seeing and which ones are not and why. But when you go in and you've previewed the home and you know the home, keep an eye on where the exits are. Is there a back door? Where is it? Is there a front door? Where is it? If I go down into the basement, don't lead the way and have your buyers behind you, between you and the way out. Let them go first, right? When you're down in the basement, is there an exit from the basement? A lot of times what people will do is have the buyers go down to the basement and the agent kind of lets them have a little bit of free roam and they stay closer to the stairs. But just, again, it's common sense kind of stuff. But think about that. Know where the exits are. Establish a safety statement. What's a safety statement? Well, a safety statement is a statement that you would use to let someone know that you're in trouble. When I was in healthcare back in the day in the hospitals, we used to page doctors overhead a lot. And then we went to paging systems and the doctors all carried pagers. And then we kind of went to different models. You almost never hear an overhead page in the hospitals the way that we used to years ago. But in the hospital system that I worked in, there was a code. And the code was if they paged a doctor by the name of Dr. Blue, if Dr. Blue was paged to, the third wing or whatever it would be, Dr. Blue's page was code for there's problems here. I need people to get here, right? And it was just kind of a safety statement. And people knew if you heard Dr. Blue being paged to a certain floor that you stopped what you were doing and you went up to figure out how you could help. Well, I think that kind of a safety statement is not a bad idea, right? That key people in your life know that if you call up, and a safety statement could be something as innocuous as, hey, Cynthia, it's Hal. I'm showing a property at 125 Main Street in Nutley, and I forgot to bring the property sheets. Could you fax one over to me? The statement of an address, you saying you forgot to bring the property sheets and the request to fax them could be your safety statement that builds right into it where you are, where you are, right? And then you can go get help. Back in the day when our super keys were separate devices and not on our smartphone, they were made by General Electric, and the GE logo was right on the super key. The super key was wired to, if you pressed the GE logo and held it, it would call 911. That's the way it was built. Now, I don't know if there's a panic button in these new Supras on the apps. I don't know. There might be. But I think a safety statement's not a bad idea. Last couple things. Be mindful of your attire. And this is in no shape or form designed in any way to kind of blame the victim when bad things happen. But it is something to just be conscious of. Is there really a need to wear lots and lots of expensive jewelry when you're out showing homes? I mean, if you have an image to keep up and you want to present yourself in a certain way, just be mindful. I know a lot of agents who are luxury agents that feel like wearing jewelry and expensive looking jewelry is part of their image, part of their brand. And yet, when they're showing homes, they wear costume jewelry, right? But my feeling is, I don't think somebody is going to know the difference. If they're going to want to steal it, they're going to grab it. So just be conscious, right? Be conscious of what you're wearing. Be conscious of the jewelry and things like that. Safety first, right? Just trust your gut, trust your instincts. There's a class that we teach at the board level. I don't teach it, but the boards teach it, which really goes through a lot of detail around safety. Keller Williams has a course that I do teach that's called Safety by Choice and Not by Chance. But again, it's just one of these things, if you're showing homes and you're going in separate cars and you're pulling into the driveway, you don't go first and get blocked in by someone else. You let them go in, and then you're the last car in. Or you keep your car on the street so that you don't have a chance of getting blocked in, right? All those kinds of things I just want you to be conscious of when you're showing homes. Any questions around those or any other safety tips that people have come up with that they want to share? Should customers also sign a COVID-19 waiver? Absolutely, Roddy. It's now required. Got to get a COVID waiver signed. Do I have to join the NAR, the National Association of Realtors, or can I be an agent without it? Miriam, you do not have to join the National Association of Realtors because of state law, but you do have to join the National Association of Realtors in order to join the board, and you do have to join the board in order to join the MLS, and without MLS access, your license is meaningless. So technically you you do. You really do. And it's going to be a requirement in your office. As they're onboarding you, they're just going to take your application and send it in. That's just going to be a requirement to be in our offices, is that you have the ability to do business. Otherwise, there's real no point in being there, right? Any other questions around safety stuff though? Okay, best practice.
I have a suggestion I normally do.
Go ahead.
What I do is when I'm working with people, I normally take a picture of the license plate and I email it to somebody else.
You know what? That's a great idea. Never thought of that. Never heard of that. But you know what? I think that's a terrific idea.
It's just like I'm checking my phone. So it's normally a quick picture of the license plate, and then it's forwarded to somebody.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And there are actually apps. And there are safety apps that are designed for realtors that I think even allow for those kinds of things where you can take a picture and it'll distribute it out there. I don't know any of the names off the top of my head, but I have seen them advertised. And so I would even just, at some point, maybe this weekend, just go into the App Store and just play around and see if there's any apps that make any kind of sense like that. But I think that's a great idea. You know, take the license plate so that you know, so people know who's where and where they are and who you're with, right? Okay. Best practice, give ample time. To give the seller time to prepare. Sellers want to make sure the house is looking great, and they may have to kind of clean up the dinner dishes or whatever it is. So try not to just do this on the fly and try to push your way into a showing with not enough time to prepare. Another best practice tip, you know, if you're going to cancel or postpone or you're running late, please make a courtesy call. Let the agent know what's going on. Because A, they may have another appointment scheduled right behind you. And if you're running 25 minutes late and the person shows up on the half hour, that person really has the right to get into that house and you only have 5 minutes. So just make courtesy calls, right? The other thing is, and this should not happen, and you're going to see in the methodology we teach you today, this really will not happen. But if you're showing homes and suddenly the buyer says, you know what, I changed my mind, I don't want to see 125 Main Street, then call, because I don't want the seller to have left and to be staying out of the house for a period of time, giving you space only to find that you weren't there. They're going to come home. They're going to call the listing agent for feedback on what your buyers thought about that home. And your listing agent is going to go give you a call and you're going to say, oh, we didn't go. And now everybody's mad, right? So courtesy calls, really important to do. Be aware that people have smart homes. And so, you know, just like people have said, you know, don't put anything on social media that you wouldn't want your grandmother to read. Don't say anything inside the house that you don't want the seller to hear, because there's a chance that they're hearing you. Now, smart homes are supposed to, people that own that kind of technology are supposed to, they're required by MLS rules to notify you of that in the MLS. But I'm here to tell you, I believe the vast majority of them do not. And I don't necessarily believe that people are intentionally spying. But nanny cams and Ring devices and all kinds of things can capture things that you're doing and that you're saying. So be mindful. Assume you're being watched, assume you're being heard, and behave accordingly. And I would coach my buyers to do the same thing before we go in and see the home together. A lot of times what people will say is, let's go through the home and then we'll leave the home to discuss it, rather than discuss it while inside the house. When we get into Sean's process, he's going to talk about wanting to kind of think about the house and talk about the house while standing in the kitchen. I think in this day and age, you might want to rethink that. So, smart devices. Don't be dumb. Be smart. Register your showings through the lockbox key, as we talked about. Don't just pass the key off from one to the next. Develop a key system. What does that mean? Have a place where when you go into the house, you put the key in a place again and again and again. Now, for me, a lot of times it was just in my pocket. I would take when the lockbox opens up and that little canister falls out, I would take the canister and I would put it on the floor right by the front door, because I didn't want to just kind of walk in and put the canister down somewhere. And then we're trying to lock up the house and I can't find where it is. I've done that, guys. And then you look silly. Or you're going through the house and you put the canister and the key down and suddenly it's time to go and you're like, where's the key? I can't find the key. Have a place, a way you're going to do it every single time. For me, the key went in my pocket, the canister went on the floor by the door, and I always knew where to go for it. And I only had to look silly a few times. But you have a system, it fixes that. Give feedback to the listing agent. And many times it's important to leave a business card to show that you were there. That's commonplace. Sometimes you'll go into the house and you'll see business cards on the table, or there might be a place where they're collecting them. I think it's really important to give that agent feedback, though, because their sellers want to know what your buyers thought. And if the listing agent has to chase you down and can't get that feedback, it makes them look bad in the eyes of their sellers. And so part of what we want to do always is lift each other up, right? Just make each other's job easier. And if the feedback isn't great, fine. I believe that there's a methodology through your showing time that solicits feedback. Am I right? That there's an email or something that comes that asks for that kind of feedback? If so, fill it out, right? Okay. last but not least, have a kit, a car kit, right? What do you need to have when you're showing homes just in case? I think you should have all the paperwork that you would possibly need to write up a contract on the spot if you had to and the power was out, right? If for some reason you want to write up a contract and you go to your laptop and you've got Wi-Fi service, but you can't get into Dotloop or you can't get into DocuSign, have paper ready, right? Because you can always fill it out, wet signature, and scan it into the system. You don't want to miss the moment because you don't have the paperwork. Just have it all. And what I did is I went to Staples and I just got a box of one of those boxes that you could put hanging folders in. And that was my showing kit. And I just kept it in my trunk. And I had the paperwork in there. I had paper goods, things like paper towels. You know, if there's something that you need to clean up, if toilet paper, not a bad idea to have some of that. In the beginning of the pandemic, that was a hard commodity to find. But you never know when nature calls, especially in new construction or vacant homes, and you get to the bathroom and there's no toilet paper, have some ready. Notepads, pens, things that your buyers can take notes on. Again, I'm going to give you a process in a minute where I'm going to require that you, or ask rather, that you have the printout sheet, the MLS printout sheet. And on the back, people can write on it, right? Have a tape measure. People sometimes want to measure space, you know, and gee, how big is this wall? I wonder if my sofa would fit there. And so have a tape measure ready. Have a level, you know, have a first aid kit. You know, you never know. Something happens. Somebody cuts their finger. One of the kids is running around. They fall down on the sidewalk and skin their knee. Have a first aid kit nearby, right? A compass. A compass is a big deal in a lot of cultures. The orientation of the house, the way it faces, is a big deal. And so knowing the direction that the house is oriented on the lot, where that front door is, how it's facing, can be a really important factor. So have a compass.
Can you use your phone for that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. There are apps that you can use on your phone that are measuring apps, like a tape measure. There are apps that you can put on your phone that are compasses. There are even apps that act as levels. So you can, in this day and age, do those, but be ready to kind of resolve those kinds of issues if they come up. Umbrellas. You have no idea how many times I get caught. It looks nice when I go outside, halfway through the clouds turn up, and before you know it, you're all soaked. Have umbrellas with you, right? What else? Masks, gloves, booties in this day and age of COVID, hand sanitizer, all those things are important now more than ever. I love always the booty thing. You forget the idea of COVID. I love the idea of having booties in the car. So when you walk in, you put them on your shoes and you show the homeowner the respect that you're not going to dirty their soil or carpet. Every contractor in the last couple of months, whenever I've had work done in here in my home, the contractors now come in, they put those booties on right before they walk across our carpets. And I think showing that kind of respect is important, right?
Very thoughtful. I would also bring water.
Yeah, bottled water can be a really good thing, right? What else? What else can you think of that you would put in your customized kit? You know, one of the things that I did, which I didn't put on here, is I tried to show the homes without children in tow. I think as much as you can. I want mom and dad, if there's family with kids, I want mom and dad to be able to see the home and kind of really be thoughtful about it without having to deal with kids running around. But I live in the real world and I'm a dad, and I know that sometimes kids are going to come on these tours. One of the things that I did, 15 years ago is I went out and I bought a couple of those little handheld digital games. They were like, I don't know, $99 each. I had 2 of them. And so what I knew is if you want to get a kid to stop dead in their tracks and be quiet, you just give them a little toy to play with, a digital game, and they'll just sit quietly and play. And I think anything that you can do like that, I'm going to avoid crayons and things like that because that could end really badly. We don't want to have pictures drawn on walls. But anything that you can do to kind of occupy kids so that mom and dad can kind of look at the house without feeling like they need to be going 16 different directions can also be valuable, right? All right. Anything else we would add to this list?
Now, it may sound crazy, but one house we went into, the sellers had a folding chair at the door so people could sit down and put those booties on.
Yeah.
Which was very nice because it was so hard to stand up trying to put them on.
For sure. You end up falling down and all that stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's the idea. Picture yourself going out to tour homes. What would make this experience better for you? That's kind of doing the unexpected that you hear me talk about again and again.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a transactional business world. The things that we do, everybody does. We have to do them differently, right? If we can do it differently and create a different experience, it works really well for us. So best practice, I'm going to get into Sean's methodology. It is a 26-minute long interview, and I'm going to stop it and deconstruct it. So I told you we're going to go long. I hope you can stick with me. But the best practice idea, just a couple of concepts before we get started. One of the things that we have to recognize is that when buyers start the process of looking at homes, they get excited. And when people get excited, they get stimulated and they want to see more. And there is this tension that we always have in showing homes where buyers get excited and they want to see more, they want to see more, they want to see more. And what we know is once they start to see too many, they get overloaded, they get overstimulated, and then they can't make a decision. And so there's always this tug of war between buyers wanting to see more homes and our need to kind of funnel them down and see less homes. And we're going to talk about how to do that today in a way that they can see enough homes to trust their judgment. That's the thing we have to be careful of. Many, many times when you truly become the market expert in your market and you're talking to a buyer and the buyer says, this is what we're looking for. I want this kind of a house with this many bedrooms, this many bathrooms, full finished basement, 2-car garage, and in this neighborhood and all those different things. And you start to think, I know where that house is. That's the house on Elm Street. I've shown that house a couple of times. That's exactly what he's asking for. And so you say, you know what? I think I know where that house is. And you go out and you schedule it and you go show Elm Street and you go in and they're like, oh my God, dude, you are like a mind reader. This is exactly what we had in mind. And you're like, I'm so smart. And then you're going to ask them, do you want to put an offer on this one? And you know what they're going to say? They're going to go, I mean, I think I might, but I haven't seen anything else. And the fear of believing that there's a better option out there causes them to hesitate because they want to see more just to be sure. And when they're out seeing more just to be sure, you know what's happening to this one, don't you? Somebody else is buying it. And so we can't let that happen. We have to have a methodology where people see enough homes to trust their judgment so that they can take action and they're not hesitant. If we're going to get you to make a decision in one day, you got to trust that there's no better options out there. So narrowing the focus through this methodology is part of what we're going to do. The other thing that we need to do when we're doing our needs analysis and our buyers consultations is really help prioritize people's needs and wants. Talk to me about the things that you need to have. What are the gotta haves? And what are the, it would be nice to have, but they're not mission critical. Being able to separate those two. And then on the list of gotta haves, which is your number one gotta have, which is your number two gotta have, which is your number three. Because unless we have already prioritized all of these issues, when we get into the home and buyers start to see the home, they're going to get all jammed up. They're going to see some things that they like, some things that they don't like, and they've got to make a decision between competing properties. If they don't have a systematic way of sorting through that, of saying, this is what I think is most important and not, then they're not going to be able to decide. And our job is to try to get them to decide faster and to get into action. So prioritizing what's important is really important. Set the expectation right out of the gate that we're going to make a decision quickly, that the process that you're going to use, that we're going to find the right home quickly. And when we do, you're going to be able to act on it. The National Association of Realtors tells us that the average buyer sees no more than 8 or 10 homes. And so we just want people to kind of know right out of Jump Street that this is not going to be 30, 40, 50, 120 homes. This is not going to be that we're going to become dance partners for the next 6 months. We're going to be efficient. We're going to find the right home. And the expectation is you're going to make a decision, right? Gary Keller's words of wisdom. Consumers are less likely to buy when presented with too many choices. So let's not get them overloaded. Ironically enough, when you prioritize their wish list and you help buyers decide which are the right homes to see and which are the ones that don't make the cut, you know, you're going to make decisions faster. Avoid the temptation right? And then we'll get into the video. Avoid the temptation to find the perfect house. What do I mean by that? What I mean is when buyers come and give you a menu of things that they want, and we dutifully take notes. It's like we're at the restaurant and the waiter has taken our order, and I want a 2-car garage, and I want a full finished basement, and I want, 3 bedrooms, and I want at least 2 baths, and I want a game room or a room that could be used as an office, and all those different things. What we tend to do is we tend to take that list of items and then go to the MLS and do a search. And we say, okay, I'm looking for homes in Paramus. I want a 2-car garage. I want at least, 3 bedrooms. Got to have at least 2 full baths and all that stuff. And it takes all that inventory and it says, okay, here's the 9 that meet all those criteria. And so you show those 9 homes and you start to try to make some decisions about those 9 homes. And unfortunately, what is going to happen too many times is that their real dream home never made that list. Because while it had a 2-car garage and it was in Paramus and it had the right number of bedrooms, it didn't have 2 full baths. It only had 1.5 baths. But the half bath could have been enlarged and turned into a full bath. And truth be told, had the buyers seen that one, that would have been their dream house. And you never saw it because you had your filtering so tight that you eliminated too many. The methodology that I want you to get into is really letting them see every single thing in their broadest criteria, in the geographic regions that they're interested in the price range that they're interested in. I'm going to allow you to see everything. I'm not going to take you to see everything, but we're going to see everything, and you're going to filter out which of those make the most sense to go out and see. And we're going to walk through that in just a second. But the mistake that we make, and the thing that causes our buyers to miss great opportunities, is we try too hard to find exactly what they tell us they're looking for, rather than letting them self-discover by weeding things out on their own. And then the final thought around that is, there's an adage in this business, a saying that I don't like. Some of you may have heard it. It says, buyers are, what's the rhyming word that completes that sentence? Buyers are?
Liars.
All right, there you go. Buyers are liars. And the truth is, I don't believe that's true. I don't believe buyers intend to lie. What I really do believe is that people have a way of showing up in your life in the way you expect them to show up. If you expect people to be liars, you're going to find people lying to you. If you expect your children to rise to the moment and do their best, they're going to do that. If your expectation is that your kids are going to be flunkies, they're going to do that too. I don't think buyers are liars. What I think happens is that buyers don't know what they want until they see it. And they think they might, but they don't really know for sure. It's just like falling in love. I mean, for those of you that are in a committed relationship, a marriage or dating or whatever it is, if I asked you years before you met your partner to tell me exactly what they would be and what they would look like and what their behavior and personality would be like, truth be told, you probably wouldn't be able to do it because you don't know until you're in the moment. Buyers fall in love with homes and they don't know it until they get into the experience. So we're going to need to let them have a lot of options. They got to play the field with these houses, right? Okay, here is the conversation. This is Sean Healy. That's Gary Keller. And this is actually an audio recording. It's not a video. This is an audio recording that was recorded probably, 10 or 12 years ago. Gary used to run a podcast before podcasts were cool that was called Agent Mountain. And he would just interview top agents and put it out there for people to hear. This is an episode that was recorded from Agent Mountain, and it's up on the KW site. I'm going to show you where to find it if I can get my computer to play nice. In fact, let me go right now to where we're going to find it. I actually have recorded this, and I have my own version of it, my own copy of it, so that in the unlikely event Keller Williams ever takes this off the website, that I still have a backup, because I think teaching to this methodology has been so productive. But when I share the screen and I go to my KW website, which you see here, you're just going to go to the Education tab. And when you do, it takes you to Keller Williams University. This is where all the courses are and all that good stuff. What you're going to do is go up into the little search box here. And the easiest way to find this is just search on his name. His name is Sean, S-E-A-N, Healy, Healey, and just hit search. And when you search on his name, what you're going to find is there's his little bio, but this is actually the interview that we're looking for. It's called Buyer's Agents, How to Show Only Once. You click on that, and it's going to come right up for you, and you're going to be able to listen to it. So what I'm going to do for you, oops, I didn't mean to go there. What I'm going to do for you here is take this link, copy it, throw it right up into the chat box for you so you can kind of find it again if you're so inclined. And I would encourage you to listen to this more than once because there's a lot of subtleties about what he's doing here. So we're going to just jump right in. I'm going to stop it at different points to kind of deconstruct what he's doing and why he's doing the things that he's doing. But I want you to hear this, and let's just rock and roll. So I'm going to move my microphone so you can hear better.
Hey, Sean, it's Gary. How are you today? Good, Gary. How you doing? I'm awesome, man. I'm even awesomer now that you're on the phone. That's awesome. It's optimistic. There you go. You went up from yellow. It's the opposite. Okay, so we're going to talk about what today? We are going to talk about kind of the showing process that I've developed for buyers, as well as setting expectations with the primary goal of only showing the buyer one time and finding the home that they want to purchase. Good. Walk me through that. Okay. So basically, just to kind of set a little background on it, I have developed a system that basically 90% of the time allows me to get buyers under contract the very first time that I go out. And it's a mix of experiences with one of the very first buyers I ever worked with years ago, and some basic sales techniques that I mixed into the process. And it's important that, you know, the whole process kind of be followed from beginning to end. The interesting thing is that people have tried to butcher this and do bits and pieces and not have the success that they ultimately could have. So just to give you a little background on.
I'm going to stop that for just a second, and I want to drive that point home. You know, it's not a menu. If you're going to do this, if you don't line up all the dominoes in the right order and do this in this way, it's not to say you won't still be more efficient, but you're not likely to have the kinds of outcomes where you can get people under contract in one day. And so it's a process. It's not a menu. So just something I wanted to drive home.
On our area in Denver, we're in Adams County, and we have a lot of lower priced homes in Adams County. Quite a few buyers below 200,000, even more below 150,000. And the first thing that we do in an initial presentation is to really try and effectively set the expectations for our buyers about the realities of the market in three specific areas. And we do that before we show any homes, because once you start showing homes, it's a little bit too late to set expectations. So the first area that we set expectations in is that it's a seller's market in the price range that they're in, which means very low inventory. As a matter of fact, our inventory is down 40% lower than it was this time last year. And it wasn't, oh my gosh, yeah. And it really wasn't that high last year. And we want to let them know that the best homes go fast. I mean,
so let me stop there for a second. Does that sound familiar? Does that feel like our market right now too, where there's not a lot of inventory and there's a lot of demand? And the truth is, what the buyers need to understand in any market that we're in is that the best homes aren't going to last. When buyers recognize value, they're going to jump. And so the truth of the matter is, what buyers need to understand is that when they really find a great opportunity, other people are going to recognize it as well. So be prepared to act and be prepared to act quickly, right? That's the first concept that we want to plant into their brains.
And sometimes within hours, or a couple of days. And we let them know up front, don't be surprised if you find the home you want to buy the very first time we go out looking, because of the low inventory and the home search process that we use, most of my clients do. So kind of setting that expectation in their mind that they're not going to be, looking for endless weeks and months for the perfect home.
Again, I'm going to stop there for a second because what he's saying, and that's scripted, guys. That is a script. Don't be surprised if you find the home the very first time we go out. Most of my buyers actually do, and it's because of the process that we're going through and the low inventory. But what it does is it gives permission that when people see the home the first time they go out, and their tendency is to say, that happened too quickly, I can't trust it, I need to see more. It gives permission to say, don't be surprised if this happens. It happens all the time. And in fact, it adds social proof. This is what happens for most of my buyers. So I think that's a really important idea to get into people's heads before we go out.
Now, we also, the next day that we set expectations in is multiple offers. So I want you to know that due to the low inventory of homes in our price range, or in the price range that you're looking at, and the relatively high demand due to the historically low interest rates, there's a high chance that you will be in a multiple offer situation with other buyers, competing for the same home that you like. So first off, we try and ask them, are you a competitive person? Do you play to win? And most of them say yes. And so we follow up and say, hey, well, if you're truly competitive, then when the multiple offer situation does materialize, we're going to be asking you how much over full price that you want to go in order to secure this property.
Guys, I don't want you to forget to ask that question. Do you see yourself as a competitive person? That's really important that you don't forget to ask that. There's a reason for that. And the reason is simply this. When it comes time to take action, if they hesitate, your tendency is to want to try to push them along. Your tendency is to try to encourage them to not hesitate and to let them know that if you wait, you're going to lose an opportunity, and they're going to hear that as you being pushy. However, if they get to time to act and they hesitate, and you can kind of challenge that, not with your assessment, but with their own words. Hey, you know what, Sean, help me out here, because in the very beginning of this process, you said that you were a competitive person, that you play to win. Is this what competitive behavior looks like? And when people are confronted, not with your words, but with their own, then it's inescapable. And you will find that people don't resist as hard, that they start to say, yeah, you're right, I'm just afraid. And then you can walk through that and you can work on it. But if you haven't established in their own definition of themselves as a competitive player, anytime that you challenge their behavior, it's going to be you who's being pushy and not them who's not living up to their own definition. Does that make sense? And if you forget to ask, you don't have the opportunity to play that card if you need it. So make that part of your process.
And if you really love the home, we may actually find it necessary to put in an escalation clause into the contract, which basically states that you're willing to pay $1,000 over the next highest offer price that the seller has received. And Gary, by the way, I want to let you know that there's even another level of competition that we may need to exercise, which is the sight unseen offer. We would do that if a new home hits the market that matches your criteria, but it just hits the market, and for whatever reason, our schedules, we can't get together. I may call you up and suggest that we submit an offer to just try and secure that property. Then if we're successful getting that property under contract and controlling it, then we can get out and take a look at it. And if for some reason you don't like the home or it's not what we're looking for, then you can get out of the contract later at no risk to you.
All right, I'm going to stop here for a second because I have to say a few things about that. I'm not a fan of sight unseen offers. I'm seeing them happen in our market again now because the market is so darn competitive. But the reason why I don't like them is because they almost never stick. People need to see the house themselves before they commit to it. I get that. But in a competitive market, when you win the day and you haven't really seen it, that what happens is that the seller has turned away other opportunities. And then when you go out and see it and say, this isn't as good as I thought it was, now you have hurt that seller because those other opportunities are gone. And maybe they can come back and get rebuilt, and maybe they can't. When you are showing homes and making an offer, what you're saying is that your buyer is ready and willing and able. And you can't say that with certainty if the buyer hasn't seen it. So I am not a fan of sight unseen offers. And I'll tell you the truth. The listing agent knows whether you've been there or not. And I'm going to tell you that most listing agents won't take an offer seriously if you haven't been there. So they make sense in certain markets like rebuilders, right? Javier, are you the one who's got the business where you buy and flip houses?
Yes.
Yeah, it might make sense for you to buy something sight unseen if you're going to flip it and do the work. If the numbers make sense, would you agree?
Yes, but and there is plenty of opportunities like that, but I never do that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. But but it makes more sense in that scenario than it does if you're going to actually go in and live in it. My point is this. What we're trying to establish here in the front end of this conversation is to say, look, this is going to be something that the methodology that we have, we're going to find the right opportunity quickly, and we're going to need to take action. And we can't take little mamby-pamby action. We've got to take big, bold action. Are you competitive? Because if you're competitive, this is the way we're going to have to play. And there are times for people that say, you know what, that's not me. I'm not really that competitive. I don't really have that DNA to kind of get in there and scrap. That's fine. Then let's talk strategy. Because if you're not a competitive person, then we should probably be looking at homes that aren't in as much demand, which means that we should probably be going to look at homes that have been on the market a little bit longer, maybe homes that the market has already passed over. I'm cool shopping at the discount rack if you want.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When I was looking for houses for myself, our expectations of what we were looking at changed in the process. Like we were first looking for like 5-bedroom or 4-bedroom, but then we were like, we are okay with 3 bedrooms, or or maybe we really want a house, a bedroom on the main floor. Then we were like, if it's too expensive, maybe we want to change it. So do buyers really do like that? And how do we avoid in the sense that even if they tell us in the first go that these are their prioritizing list, and but they, in a process of maybe a week or two, they change it, or even a month of showing them?
Yeah. You know what? Look, is nothing is foolproof, right? People sometimes do change as they go, but the more that you can do to get clarity before you go out, the more you can ask deeper and more thoughtful questions and really poke around prioritization. And let's talk about why this is an issue and why that's so important. What could cause you to kind of maybe change your mind about that? To ask those kinds of really deep questions makes it less likely that people are going to modify as they go. Usually what happens, in my experience, is that modification is made because they're not satisfied with what they see at the price point that they're in. And so they decide, what am I willing to give up in order to still get some of what I want? But look, you're going to find some of that. But by and large, the more you can do on the front end with a thorough needs analysis, the less of that you're going to see, right? Anyway, let's just jump back into this because I don't want to interrupt too much more, but there's a lot of places I'm going to want to interrupt. So let's get back into the conversation.
So that's expectation number 3, which is multiple offers. And then the final one is buy like an investor. Okay, so
now hold on for a second, guys. I know that my mic, I have to turn it every time to move it away. This is a dialogue that I want you to learn. And so what a script is kind of the prescriptive language. We say things in prescriptive ways. You don't have to memorize this conversation word for word, but you have to be able to communicate this idea of buying like an investor. So I'm going to let him talk about what he says, and then we'll sort of deconstruct why this has to be communicated.
I want to make sure that you understand, Gary, that in the price range you're in, it's likely that you're not going to find the ultimate dream home all fixed up and perfect. You obviously, most of the homes we're going to see are move-in ready. However, they're going to likely need carpet, paint, appliances, countertops, cabinets, maybe a few other minor fix-up things. And that's actually a big advantage to you over the long haul because you're able to buy like an investor. Just think, when an investor buys a home, do you think they're going out and looking for something that's all fixed up and perfect and ready to go? I always says no. Of course not. Investors look for homes that need work so that they can get a good price, put in the work, and sell the home for a profit. Well, that's exactly what you'll be able to do, Gary. Get a good deal on a home, put some work into it over the next few years. Then when our market turns around and you're ready to take the next step up to a more expensive home, you'll be able to reap the reward of all the work that you put into that home for higher profits, just like an investor does.
Okay, that's a lot of words. And you don't have to memorize all those words. But you have to communicate the idea. Why is that so critical that you communicate that idea that, you know, you may go into a home and find a home that needs a little bit of work, and that's actually an opportunity for you? Why is that so important?
Highlight the potential.
Potential. What happens when people go into a home that, you know, you walk in, you're all excited, you walk into the house and you're like, it looks like it was last touched in the Eisenhower administration. I got to update the kitchen. I got to update the bathroom. I got to get the wallpaper off the walls. How do they feel emotionally in that moment?
They're not inspired, that's for sure.
They're disappointed. And if you're going to make a decision to move forward today, I can't let you be disappointed. And so the technique is what we call reframing. It's when you take something and you change the context to make the experience different. Think about going to a garage sale and you find a picture that, like, that's a pretty cool picture, but the frame is gross and it's dirty. But if I buy the picture at the garage sale and I go to the frame store, I could get a new frame, put the picture in it, and then it feels different.
I've actually done the opposite. I bought it for the frame.
Yeah, sometimes we do it that way too, right? But the idea of changing the context, when we're going into a home, I don't want you to see anything that's going to cause you to feel disappointment. And so if there is work to do, rather than go, oh, I want you to say, hey, this is actually good, because now I can buy like an investor. And I take that disappointment and turn it into opportunity and excitement. Without the ability to do that first, people are going to have too much ambivalence. So that's a technique of sort of setting the stage, of positive reframing things that require work as opportunity rather than disappointment and setback. Okay? So let's move along.
Could I get a small suggestion? I think it's important.
Go ahead.
I think it's important that when we do that, everybody understand how much it costs to do things.
Yeah.
And so let's say they see a house with 2 bathrooms, and the difference is, $10,000. Well, you know that to put a brand new bathroom, it will cost $30,000 or $40,000, depends on how you're going to put it. Just to add from half a bathroom to a full bathroom, that may cost only an extra $2,000.
Right.
So it's important that we have the knowledge of how much things are going to cost.
I think that's true. I think as a real estate professional, you have to have a basic knowledge of that. Now, in your background, in your business, you have detailed knowledge there, which makes you uniquely qualified. That's going to be part of your unique value proposition, Javier, because you do this for a living and you know. The thing that I think agents need to know is roughly what do things cost. But the other thing I want you to think about as an agent is what is the time value of money? Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is if I look at 2 competing homes and one needs work and one doesn't need work, and the one that doesn't need work is $50,000, or let's do it this way. The one that does need work, it would cost $50,000 to do that work. Well, here's the thing you want to start to think about. If I buy the house and I spend $50,000 to upgrade that house in the span of a year or 2 and get everything the way that I like, I took $50,000 of resources out of my personal wealth, wherever it was, and I dedicated it to these repairs. What if I just bought a more expensive house? What if I went out and I said, okay, instead of buying this house at $350,000 that needs work, what if I just buy a $400,000 house The difference of the $50,000 leveraged across a 30-year loan, you know how much that would be? $50,000 per month at today's prevailing interest rates? It's going to be about $160 a month extra. And $160 over the course of the year is $2,000. You would have to be in that house 25 years to spend the same $50,000 that you put out of your pocket in 1 year to do the repairs yourself. All those things are important to help people think through. You do need to know how much things cost, but you also need to know what it costs to leverage that repair and to roll it into either a more expensive home or to use a certain type of a loan product, a rehab loan that allows you to do the repair and build it into the purchase price, right? So we'll talk about those loans at a different day. I want to get through this topic, but Javier, really good point. Got to know what things cost. All right, let's get back in.
The three areas that in our market we really want to push home because, you know, the media still is not necessarily caught on that we're in a fast-moving seller's market in certain price ranges. Uncle Billy Bob, who's advising them and their parents, are all thinking, "Hey, go in and lowball the house." We want to get them clear before they go out there. Number one, what they're up against, and number two, what they're going to be seeing, so that they're not shocked when they walk into a house that needs carpet, paint, various different things.
Okay, so walk me back real quickly. Let's take the first one again. Don't be surprised, you know, if you find your home quickly.
Don't be surprised if you find the home you want to buy the very first time we go out. Most of my clients do.
Now, I'm going to stop there for a second. If I was on a national podcast with the CEO of my company, I don't know whether I would have corrected him like that. However, Gary didn't say the right thing there. What Gary said was, don't be surprised if you find your home quickly. And what Sean said, no, hold up. That's not what I want them to hear. It's different than that, Gary. What I want people to hear is, don't be surprised if you find your home the very first time we go out. Most of my buyers do. Quickly is a relative term. Sean's is specific. And so we've got to be clear that we're getting the expectation that we're going to find it not quickly. Don't be surprised if you find it the very first time we go out. Most of my buyers do, right?
Now, talk to me about the objections that you might get when you say that.
Well, there's no objections at that point because I'm just presenting. They don't jump up and say, "Oh, well, why would we do that?" Because this whole presentation basically flows into the next level that I'm going to give it to. It's kind of a funnel process. The reason that they find the home that they want to buy the very first time is because of the process that we have in place. And basically that process kind of acts like a funnel, Gary. And what I'm going to do now for you is, this is obviously an in-office meeting. It's not over the phone or by email or anything like that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull a list of every available listing from every real estate company in Denver that matches your broadest home buying criteria within your target price range. And then I'm going to print that whole list of homes out for you to review. And kind of a sidebar here, I notice a lot of agents are trying to get websites in their IDX solutions to find the home that the buyer actually wants to buy. And that does happen sometimes, but I think it's more luck than anything else. And they also like to try and pull, send the buyer emails of lots of different properties that might work for that buyer. And I think really the use of IDX and email listings is to kind of cement a relationship with a buyer, kind of develop that relationship, and maybe even with your B and C buyers, just kind of leave them in there as you develop the relationship. But with an A buyer, I strongly believe you need to meet with them face-to-face in the office.
I just need to stop and just explain, if you don't know what he was talking about there, IDX stands for Internet Data Exchange. It's the systematic way that brokers share their inventory with each other across the technology platforms. When someone goes to your website and searches for property, they're going to see Keller Williams listings and Coldwell Banker listings and Weichert listings. All of that is because of the internet data exchange. And what Sean is simply saying here is, that we try to get too specific. As I mentioned before, we put so many criterias and we try to allow the system to try to find the perfect match by saying, show me 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, et cetera, et cetera. And if you find one like that, it's probably going to be luck. That's what Sean is saying. That it's a far better way to start with a broad search and let people filter it out themselves, right? So let's get back into this.
And do it a little bit differently. And so what we do is we print this broad list of properties, hard copy on paper. It's just hard for buyers to kind of sort through 30 or 40 listings scrolling up and down on their computer, and found that most of them don't print out the listing. They just kind of scroll up and down the page. And so what we want them to do is we want them to take a list of 20, 30, 40, whatever the list of homes is, and be able to have that hard copy and lay them down side by side and be able to compare all the features of those homes and figure out which ones look the best to them. So then what I say is, tonight I want you to take this list of homes back to the house, Gary, and I want you to study each home, pick out the best 10 or 15 that look good to you on paper. Then tomorrow, I want you to drive by those homes to see what you think of the outside, see what you think of the neighborhood too, because after all, you're not just buying a home, you're buying a neighborhood too. Then I want you to immediately pick out the best 3 or 4 homes, call me right away on my cell phone so I can check availability and schedule private showings of those homes either that same day or the next day. So I always say,
I'm going to stop there for a second and just unpack this process. Again, ideally it would be an in-office meeting if we could pull that off. And I don't think we do it quite the same way. Even before COVID, we didn't always bring people into the office quite the same way. But I do think there's a lot to be said for the notion of printing off everything with the pictures that meets the broadest criteria. 30, 40, 50, however many it is, get that packet in their hands. Maybe you bring it to them and drop it off and say, I want you to go through these tonight and start to filter this list. And what you will find, people really do they need to sort through so much data to make it physical, where they can have I don't like this pile, I do like this pile, a maybe pile in between. That really does help people to make decisions faster and more clearly. And the idea then of saying, look, let's take this whole list. And I know you told me you don't like capes, and there's probably going to be some capes in there. So put those in, you don't like that list, right? But go through the whole list, figure out maybe the 10 or 12 that look really good, and then go cruise the neighborhood and see what you think. Now, this is where a lot of agents push back frequently. And they say, I'm not going to ask my buyers to do that. My buyers don't want to do that. My buyers want me to take them out and show. You're going to find people have a way of showing up the way you expect them to show up. When you ask them to do this, very rarely have I had an agent tell me that their client pushed back. They want to see what the neighborhood looks like themselves. They want to go out and cruise. And so they go out and they take a look at the neighborhood, and if there's any deal breakers, they take this list of 12, let's get it down to the 3 or 4 that make the most sense, and then let's go and see those. That's the process. We do it that way because, quite honestly, now they've seen everything. They didn't have to go inside everything, but they saw everything, and they rejected the ones that they didn't like. And when the time comes for them to take action, they trust that they've seen everything. The thing that causes us to get tripped up is when people are afraid, if I commit to this one, there's a better one out there. That doesn't happen when you do it this way, right?
Yes, I had a client that drove all the neighborhood.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I had a client that I was taking to see homes, and they would drive past everyone first before they okayed to go see it.
I think that's what people want to do that. So let them do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing. Well, I'm going to let him finish this part up, and then we'll come back to that thought. So hold on for a minute.
I hear a lot of agents have a real tough time with that. Here's the mentality. When you tell them to pick out 3 or 4, unless they're extremely compliant buyers, they're normally going to pick out 5 or 6, which is actually your target. They're always going to add a couple. So if you tell them pick out 5 or 6 or 6 or 7, they're going to add on more houses, and before you know it, you'll be showing 8 to 10 houses, which is just that takes too much time.
And it leads to too much confusion, right? So the takeaway here is broadest search criteria, price range, and geographic neighborhoods. I don't care construction design. I don't care bedroom counts. If it doesn't meet your criteria, you put this in the don't like pile. Drive that down to about a dozen. Cruise the neighborhood and get that down to about 3 or 4. Ask for 3 or 4 because they're probably going to give you 5 or 6 or maybe even 7. That's what we're shooting for. If we can separate and decide between a pile of 6, it's far better than a pile of 12 because it's just too much to think about. Now, we're going to go through an alternate process here in a second where as we go and show these homes, you continue the filtering, but that's the methodology. What we don't want to do is say, tell me what you want. I'm going to go run to the MLS and see what I can find. Here, look at this group. Now that didn't work, then tell me again. Let me try this group. How about this group? No. Everything. Let them filter like a funnel. All right, let's move.
So then the next part, that's kind of the first part of the funnel. We funnel down the whole MLS. We get the broadest list of homes for them so that they've seen a lot of homes. It satisfies a lot of buyers' urge to see a lot of homes because they're taking a list home and studying each one of those MLS sheets, putting them into a yes pile, a no pile, a maybe pile, and then they go out and drive by 10 or 15, pick out the best 3 or 4, and now we've lowered the funnel down to 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6. So the showing process, when you're actually going out into the homes, the important thing to remember on this is at the end of the day, there can be only one. So it's important to continue the funnel decision-making process with alternative of choice closes and kind of cementing the home they like in their memory so that at the end of the day, they actually remember the home they like the most and they're not confused by all the other homes they've showed. So here's how it goes. We've now gone through, we found the houses they want to see, and we're going into the first house. And you never want to give your opinion on the house. Never, ever give your opinion. Watch for signals of what the buyer may like or dislike. You can nod, grunt, agree with things they like, but don't insert your opinion on anything unless it's a major health or safety issue, because you're not going to be the one living in the home. They are. So your opinion really doesn't matter unless it reinforces a positive decision that they've already made, or it's to give them permission to buy when they're unsure. So after you've shown the home, the first home, we always end up in the kitchen, take out the MLS printout sheet and ask some questions, the answers. So the first thing I say is, okay, Gary, on a scale of 1 to 7, leaving out the 4, with 7 being the perfect home, and Gary, there is no perfect home, and 1 being unlivable, where would you rate this home? Where do you think they rate it?
Now, guys, that's a legitimate script. And believe it or not, there's a methodology and there's a reason for why he asked that crazy question. And the question, again, I'll repeat it. You go into the home, you take a look at it, you say on a scale of 1 to 7, leaving out the 4, with 7 being the perfect home, and you know what? There is no such thing as a perfect home, and 1 being totally unlivable, how would you rate this home? There is one number that will come up 99.999 times out of 100. What number do you think that is?
6.
6? Any other guesses? Not sure?
5.
5? Okay, let's hear what it is.
I don't know. They always rated a 5. Every single time it's a 5. Well, this is the reason. Psychological reason for that. Here's the psychological reason. So first of all, they have done all the research to eliminate the 1s, 2s, and 3s. Okay. They're not gonna give you a list that has 2s and 3s in it. You take out the 4 because that's the middle ground, 7 is perfect, so there's no perfect home, so you've eliminated the 7. There's only 2 numbers they can pick, which are a 5 or a 6. So the reason they always pick a 5 on the first one is because they have nothing else to compare it to.
So who cares, right? I mean, why would you do this? It's a clever little parlor trick. No, it's not. Here's the reason why you do this. Because we are trying to just put a check on their decision making. Look, my expectation is if you filtered this list down and you drove through the neighborhoods and you pick the ones you want, all the 1, 2s, and 3s really are gone. The way that he set this up to kind of steer you into only 2 choices, if somehow a 3 comes up as the answer, we got a problem. I got to kind of just do a little bit of a check on the thinking process that you have. Is it moving in the way I expect it to? Because if not, I got to start and figure out what happened. How did that happen? What's gone wrong? Have you changed your criteria? And I don't know it, right? Whatever it is. So the purpose of this isn't just to kind of do something cool and fun or whatever it is. And in order to deliver that script, you might have to play a little bit. You know what? However you are, so play with me. This is going to sound crazy maybe, but stick with me on this. On a scale of 1 to 7, leaving out the 4, and you go through that script. I want to know what you're thinking. Because if you're thinking 5 or 6, I'm good. If you're thinking anything else, we got to come and start to understand what's happening, right?
Right.
Okay, let's move on.
Always a 5. All right. So, great. Obviously, you didn't rate it a 1, 2, or a 3. So what are the positive things, Gary, that you like about this home? And so what I do at that point is get them to visualize the home. And you can watch them. They literally go through every level of the home, down the hallways, the bedroom, and I get an exhaustive list. We like the kitchen, we like the carpet, we like, we like the big backyard, the mountain views, whatever it is they like. I just keep writing and writing and writing until they stop talking, and then I say anything else. And then they pause and they think, give you a couple of more things, anything else. And I just exhaustive list so that they are cementing that house into their memory. The biggest thing I find is people get so confused at the end of the day. Agents show them 5, 6, 7, 8, who knows how many homes. And at the end of the day, the agent says, what do you think? And the buyer says, I don't know. I don't remember the house 1, 2, or 3. I don't have any idea. So they can't make a decision. So there is no decision. And then they come up with terminology in our feedback. They say, well, yours is on the short list. With me, the short list exists as it's only one house. That's my short list. So you get an exhaustive list. Then you say, okay, now that we've got all the positives, if you were to buy this home right now, Gary, what are some of the things that you would do to move it more towards the 7?
That's a really critical thing I hope you caught. What we tend to do sometimes is we ask people, tell me what you love, tell me all the positives, right? And they give you this exhaustive list of things that they love. And then we ask them typically, tell me what don't you like about this house? And the moment we ask them what they don't like, think about the emotional energy. We're moving in a direction. Tell me what you like. I like this, I like this, I like this. I'm moving closer and closer to a buying decision. Tell me what you don't like now. I'm pulling away from a buying decision. I'm just going to ask that question differently. I'm going to not ask you in the frame of what do you not like, which creates now ambivalence. I'm going to ask you, where do you see an opportunity to make it even better, which keeps you moving towards excitement? Asking that question in that way will keep people moving emotionally in the right direction that you want them to go in. So be careful how you ask that question. Do not ask what do you like and then what do you not like. It's always what do you like and what could you make even better. Okay? All right. Guys, we're going to be done in about 6 minutes, so hang with me.
And again, continuing to ask, get an exhaustive list. What would you do? What would you change? Really get that house cemented in their mind. And then after we're done with that, we move on to house number 2. Go through the whole house, end up in the kitchen again, not giving your opinion. Okay, Gabe, this is a little different now. Hey, Gabe, pretend there are only 2 homes on the market, and you have to buy one today. Which one is it? See?
So that's the script. It's not, hey, which one do you like better? It's pretend there's only two choices in the world, and you had to make this decision and buy one of these two homes today. Which one would it be? That one or this one? What we need to do now is just keep eliminating. We started with the top of the funnel. We eliminated our way down to the neighborhoods that we drove by. We eliminated down to the ones that we want to see. And now it's kind of like a round robin tournament. Every bracket, there's a winner that moves on, right? And in the interest of time, I'm going to can the video here and just kind of walk you through these next steps. You asked that question, if there's only one, which would it be? And it doesn't matter which one, but we have to have a decision. And sometimes you're going to find that maybe one person wants one house, one person wants the other house. We can't let there be that kind of ambivalence. We've got to kind of go back to that list of prioritized wants and needs and help them tease this out, because we need a winner before we move on. And then we go to the third house and we do the same process. We go through the house, we take a look at it, and then what happens is this. We ask them, if there's only two houses, which would you pick? If the one that they pick is the one that you're in right now, and it's replacing one that had already been a previous winner, remember what we did with the previous winners. What we said was, tell me what you love, tell me what you love, tell me what you love, tell me how you can make it even better. We cemented that house into their memory. If we get into a next round and that house is the loser, we got to kick it out of the game. What I ask people to do is, give me your MLS sheet. I'll take it. I'm going to tear it up right in front of you. This one is out. Don't even think about this one anymore. It's out. Now we got to rebond and fall in love with this one. What is it about this house that you love so much? What would you do about this house to make it even better? Right? And we just go house by house by house, alternate choice closing our way through. At the end of the day, there can be only one. And we're in that last house at that last visit. And there's one clear winner left in the day. Now they have seen everything in the market that's in their price range. They have themselves been the ones who rejected everything, except this last one is left. The question now becomes, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, this, you know, I can tell you, I think that you're making a good decision. This house lines up with all the different wants and needs and priorities that you said you had. You reinforce through their eyes why they made the decision that they made. And the question now becomes, you know, as I said in the beginning, that when we find great opportunities, we're probably not the only ones looking at them. Do you want me to call the listing agent and just make sure that they're not negotiating another offer on this property right now? What do you think people are going to say? What do you think?
Say yes.
100%. 100%. After all of this, they want to make sure that nobody else has got dibs on it. And so please, 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 before you go out and show homes, make sure that these homes are fully available. If you are out there, you go through this process, and there's one winner left, and you call the listing agent says, oh, actually, we put that one under contract last night. That's going to leave a disappointment in the eyes of your buyer that your relationship might not be able to recover from. That could cost you the ability to work with that buyer any further. So what I'm going to ask you to do is truly make sure. But the question isn't yet, do you want to put an offer in? The question is, do you want me to make sure it's still available? It's a micro commitment. It's just one more step moving forward. And when you call and you find out that the answer is yes, now you close. Are you ready to put up an offer? And most of the time, what you're going to find is the momentum of this moment leads them to say, yes, let's go do it. And in the event that they say, I need to think about it, that's when we reach into our wallet and we pull out the competitive card. Help me understand this for a second. Because in the beginning, you told me you're a competitive person. You told me that you play to win, that when you have an opportunity that you're decisive and you take action. Help me understand how this is competitive. Challenging them with their words. You know, and it depends how well you know them. I remember one time being in a situation with a couple that were good friends of mine. And I knew this couple for 20 years. And so I felt that I could say this. But there was that moment of hesitation. They were going to lose if they didn't move forward. And so what I did is I said to my friends, and it was the wife who was a little bit more reluctant to move forward. And I said to her, I said, you know, Tammy, let's just pretend for a second that when we're back in school, and when Anthony decided that you were the one, would you have wanted him to wait and just kind of hang out there with that knowledge, or would you have wanted them to take action? And then I just shut up and look and listen. And she says, of course I want to take action. This time is like that time, right? We've got to get people to understand that hesitating is only going to cost them. And so establishing that competitive nature on the front end gives you the tools to have that conversation. But this is the technique. And I did cut this process short. You can go hear Sean in its entirety, but I wanted to deconstruct at key moments here what he was doing and why. When you do it this way, it is a model, not a menu. When you do it from beginning to end like this, what I have found in my experience is that more than 50% of the times, the agents that do it this way go out one day and one day only. Now, you better make sure that you've qualified well. You better make sure you've got a pre-approved buyer, or you're just wasting time. You can't do this, right? You better make sure that the buyers are truly ready, that if they find the right home, they're ready to take action. This is not a technique that you would use if somebody says, hey, we're new to the area and we're going to buy a house in 3 months, but we don't really know what we can get for our money. Can you drive us around and introduce us to what things look like? That's a different process than this. This is a process that filters decision-making and inspires action. And so we're going to close on that. I'd love to get some thoughts from you guys about this. Could you see yourself doing this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love the whole process. This was amazing. You know, actually piling them, printing them out, giving them, and they sort it out, and then just like going each one in front of them. It's like a hard work in the start, but then you actually see the results immediately.
You know, the thing that I'll tell you too is buyers actually love this. And the reason why they love this is because every step in the process creates more clarity for them, more certainty for them, less ambivalence for them. And they find that to be so much more empowering and so much more enjoyable. Buyers love this process. Will it work 100% of the time? No, nothing ever will. But the more that you can do this way, the more success you're going to have. And even if you can't get them to follow exactly the way that you want them to, doing certain things like trying to alternate choice close your way through these showings so that you don't show 6 houses and at the end of the day say, okay, which one did you like best? Because by that time they're too overwhelmed, right? It's we're going to look at these two, we're going to make a decision. We're going to compare the winner to the third, make a decision, compare the winner to the fourth, make a decision. That's the methodology. And so I just wanted to share this. I just think when you do it this way, people love it. Deals come together faster. If you can get your buyers under contract in less time, your calendar becomes more free to do what? To work with more buyers, which means your income potential increases.